Hey Age Lead Store fans, this is Bill Rice with Age Lead Store, and this week we're talking about systems. If you're stuck in your sales, production, and performance this month, there's a good chance that you're missing this critical element of sales and marketing systems. We're going to talk about that in this episode. Hey, before we jump into the content today, I would love for you to subscribe and like. If you haven't turned on the little notification bell, I would suggest you do that so that you know ahead of getting it via email exactly when all of our new videos get released. Actually, we release them usually a little bit before we actually send out the email, so you'll be kind of the first to know if you hit that little bell. And also, as we open up today, since we are talking about systems, I would love for you to put in the comments as you are thinking about your sales and marketing program, put in there, yes, I am systematizing things, or no, I'm not, or yes, I have a system, or no, I don't. The other thing that would be helpful in the comments, especially as we build out more content, is think a little bit deeper. Is there one little piece or component that maybe you've already turned into a system or a process? Possibly you're sending out, you have email campaigns sent out. Maybe you're doing something that just kind of regularly, a regular newsletter that goes out every week. Maybe you're doing voicemail drops. Maybe you're using a dialer. Is there anything in your sort of sales process that you've already turned into a system or some sort of automation? I'd love to know what those specific areas that you've chosen to automate or turn into a process or turn into a system first, and then potentially you can build some more content around kind of how to do that better or how to link it into a much bigger system. Okay, with that, we're going to jump back to the whiteboard. Okay, so often I talk to people about their kind of where they're struggling with sales, or maybe they've dipped, or their performance, or not meeting their quota for whatever. Something's sort of changed in what they're doing, and they're not really able to put their finger on what the problem is. And oftentimes, when we dig in, we find out that the process or the problem actually is they don't actually have a sales and marketing system. Too often, and even in sales training, we focus in on specific skills, and we don't ever step back and think how all these sort of skills connect and how we can actually build a repeatable, consistent system that will get us through good times and bad, let us hit out of slumps, because we're always going to have some sales slumps in there. But really, if you have systems in place, or even just at the top level, and this is kind of what we're going to cover today, even at the kind of the highest and the most basic level, you just understand sort of what the system should look like or what you should be doing at different phases in the sales cycle, can really help you up your performance and start to kind of get all the details in line and start to get higher performance, more consistent performance out of the things that you do. So we're going to drill through today a pretty traditional sales funnel. But one thing that I do notice whenever people are talking about sales funnel is often they sort of stop here, right? They go from sort of this awareness phase to a purchase phase. And they don't really talk about the fact that sometimes things happen either after the buying or potentially you'll sort of dump out into this bottom phase. So we're going to talk about how this part of the funnel is really important to your sales system. And a lot of opportunity is actually lost down in this. So I'm going to just step through step by step. And the way I want to do this is a lot of these terms, as far as thinking about a sales funnel, is probably familiar to you, but kind of the activities that you're doing, or maybe the most productive activities that you should be doing, we haven't talked about enough. So I'm going to give you a little blend of that as we go through. So obviously the first phase is just awareness, and this is making people aware of your brand, who you are. If you're selling insurance or mortgage, quite possibly it's your actual name. People becoming familiar with Bill Rice, even independent of the overall brand, because people like to buy and purchase and interact with an individual. Brands, are great and they serve a purpose. But when we're talking about sales, we want to get to the point where that consumer and everybody in your book of business is as familiar or more familiar with your individual name as it is with the overall brand, especially since there's a chance that you'll actually change that brand, right? As an agent or as a loan officer, I know I had, when I was a loan officer, I shuffle under a couple different brands. So it was really important that my clients and relationships understood who I was. So kind of building that awareness in interest phase and consideration. So you're trying to move them from, hey, I'm just aware of who can satisfy this particular need or service, who can get me insurance, who's my mortgage guy, right? That's what we're trying to create here. We're trying to get everybody that you can to say, hey, Bill is my mortgage guy, right? Or Sam is my insurance agent. Or, hey, Susie is like, if you need insurance, you need to talk to her because she's smart, right? So that's what we're trying to kind of create in here. Best tools and scenarios there. Invariably, you're going to need content, right? So website, kind of the traditional blog posting and everything, that's probably the best way to do it, but I know that's not always the easiest way, and for some people can be challenging, and there's all kinds of ways to kind of fill that gap. But when we're talking about content, this can be little snippets of content. This could be short videos that you do on Facebook, go Facebook Live, on LinkedIn is another really kind of easy way, YouTube like we're doing here. So it could be a combination of blog posts, which will give you the SEO portion of this. It could be some written snippets, short things, just funny things even, just to kind of get people to stop their scroll on Facebook and acknowledge you on social media. So there's all kinds of creative things that you can do just with short bursts. You're probably already doing it with friends and family. You just want to kind of take that to a professional or business level. But you have to have content. There has to be stuff there, and then it has to lead to a destination. So at this phase that we're talking here, we're going to talk about leads here in a second. But if you're in this process and you're using things like SEO, social media, to kind of get that initial contact going, you're sort of in the process of being a lead generator, right? You have to think about that. This is very much a marketing phase to some degree. There's some sales activities in there. Maybe you're going to local groups and connections and community organizations, those sorts of things. But in essence, at this level, because the actual consumer hasn't identified themselves or hasn't acknowledged that they have a need for your product or service, when we're operating in this part of the sales funnel, we're doing a lot of marketing type activities. The holy grail at this level of activity is to capture that email or some contact information, right? Phone number, so that you can text message as well as call. But we're looking for email and phone. But as far as sort of campaigning, although text messaging is a huge thing, and you should start doing this or figuring out how to do it. Maybe we'll do a whole session on that, how to figure out how to do text messaging well, because this was probably my number one moneymaker when I was doing campaigns, is actually using the text messaging features that are in some of these CRMs now. But at this level, we're probably using, as we get into this interest and consideration, people have started to sort of raise their hand or say that they're interested in something. We're now starting to build out our reoccurring systems, are using more of email, phone, and text message. If you are kind of doing your own marketing, PPC is really good at this as well, because sometimes you actually skip this, and we're going to talk about this a little bit. There are some sections of this funnel where you actually might be able to do some shortcuts, right? And PPC is a great shortcut to getting straight to this portion of the funnel, right? The consideration and intent. PPC can get you into that section of the funnel and sort of skip some of these. This is also where real-time leads kind of play. So So if you're not a great marketer or you don't want to do marketing, if you want to shortcut this part of the system, real-time lead providers can kind of get you in here. It's a little bit expensive because, again, you're capturing, when you're doing real-time leads, you're capturing at that moment of consideration, that moment of intent in this funnel. And so you're going to pay a little bit of a premium for that part of the equation, right? So as we move down through here, the other opportunity to kind of shortcut this part of the curve is age leads. So what age leads is going to do for you, they've kind of moved through that consideration and intent phase to some degree, or kind of settled into the intent. So you don't necessarily have the proximity to trigger consideration, like, no, hey, this is the moment of consideration. But even though 30, 60, 90 days has passed, when you're considering age leads, you know that there was intent. So either these people moved all the way through the buying cycle, in which case you have to do a slightly different thing with age leads. That's why this part is really important. We'll get to that. Or they may have just gotten stuck here. So if you're buying 30-day-old leads, that's kind of some of the advantage of buying shorter-term leads, anywhere from 2 to 30-day-old leads. There's a good chance they're still in this intent phase because we know as insurance agents and mortgage brokers and loan officers that there's quite a bit of time it takes as people are moving through that kind of evaluation phase. So age leads can be a big advantage there. When you're talking about the tools and what's getting you through and moving people through that funnel, or if you're sitting up here, this is kind of a cycle. Draw a circle here because it does sort of cycle. People move into consideration and then back to awareness and interest. So you kind of move back and forth because they're kind of just educating themselves. But once you get down to this level, when you're talking, you've actually got a lead, most likely. Some of your most valuable tools at this point is process. So when somebody's shown intent, you having a well-organized process or system, just to reiterate, that's what we're talking about. You want to have little systems at each one of these pieces and parts. So up here, you're doing, just to reiterate, you're doing email campaigns, you're doing some social media campaigns. Those are your systems up here. When you get down in here, you want to have a nice process. So as you're moving through this portion of intent and evaluation, when I say process, this means that you're going to want to immediately reach out and urgently contact. Even if you're talking about age leads, the worst thing you can do is order a batch of age leads in a CSV or an Excel spreadsheet and then just do nothing with them. You're just wasting your money, right? So whether it's an age lead, it's a real-time lead, or it's something that you've actually developed yourself, you want to urgently kick them into the process. And so that process should already be thought through. You should know exactly what you want to do every time you get a new lead, whether it's aged or real-time or self-generated. And that is probably something like, hey, I want to kick out an immediate email that says, hey, I got your interest, your inquiry. I see that you're looking for a review of your insurance, or I see that you're considering purchasing a house, and here's what we need to do next. So you kick into that process of immediate contact. You probably want to follow that up with a phone call. I like to kind of either do one or the other. Phone calls are probably not going to get answered, so this is where your voicemail skills come in. So I often like to call first, leave that voicemail, that impression, clearly stating my name, of course, and how to contact me, and then telling them I'm going to follow up with an email. So they're kind of expecting that email, sort of looking for it, because they probably ignored my call. Maybe they don't know my phone number, or they're just anxious about that whole sales engagement. And so I want to sort of prep them. And then when they get the email, I know that will probably be handled well, right? It's going to get opened, and all those nice indicators from the email system is going to tell them that, hey, emails from Bill Rice, because when they got it, they took a look at it, they opened it probably, they might have even saved it somewhere. All those activities are actually going to tell that email client or service provider that, hey, Bill Rice is kind of a friend, right? Or this person is actually interested in those emails, and that's going to help you long-term in your campaign processes. So start with that phone call, leave that good voicemail, get in that email, have them kind of take some sort of action. Even if they throw it away, at least they kind of opened it and did something with it, and that's going to be actually a positive as well. And then, of course, if you do have the capability to text message, that's a possibility as well. And we can kind of talk in a future video about text messaging. It's a slightly different sort of flow and campaign, but it's effective, right? And so sometimes, depending on how you're set up and how your system's set up, oftentimes I'll also follow up with a text message. All right, so as we go into this intent and valuation, we want to know what that process is. We want to know what those next 3 steps that we're going to do with that individual is. And some of that is probably trying to help them evaluate you as a provider and what makes you different and differential. That's where some of your marketing materials like sales sheets, presentations, having good presentation. If you're going to send a comparison of 3 loan options, let's make sure that's attractive, right? So have some format that looks professional, looks like you're organized. I mean, it could be just copying and pasting in, an Excel spreadsheet, set of cells. That looks pretty sharp and attractive. Or maybe you have something fancier that you've invested in. But make sure that you have an easy way for them to quickly evaluate you against everything else that they're getting. And I'll tell you, I don't know as much about the insurance, but in the loan officer mortgage game, the things that loan officers send clients can be atrocious, right? Misspellings, incoherent, sentences, no information, right? No sense of rates or environment or what they might even qualify for. They just kind of give nothing, right? We've been so conditioned to get them on the phone that we don't do a good job of presenting. Insurance, I'm sure your competitors are the same way, right? They're not thinking about sales and marketing the way you are, so they're not preparing an organized process. And to be able to do that quickly without thinking, just know, hey, if they're at this stage, I'm going to give them this. If they're at this stage, I'm going to do this next. That's so important to be thought out beforehand, so you can move them as quickly as possible through this phase. Now, the buying process, this is another one where your system needs to be a process. So it's probably getting to be a little bit manual at this stage, right? There's automation's probably not going to help you as much if you're moving somebody through this evaluation and buying sort of phase. So you want to know, hey, what are the steps that I need to get them through in order for them to accept that new policy, get it started, get it online, or to accept that mortgage offer and start moving towards closing, getting that commitment. I want to know, again, I want to have my little checklist here that I can go down through here so I don't have to think about it. I'm just moving them through it. And that consumer is going to feel like there's a system, there's a process in place. This isn't your first deal that you've ever done. Having that kind of very methodical steps will really give the customer a lot of confidence. Now, of course, as you're moving through this, sometimes things will either just go quiet, or maybe the customer has taken another route or going with a competitor, but that doesn't mean you just throw them here on the floor and don't do anything. You notice I've got processes and systems down here as well, because oftentimes, as you know, folks will just go dark on you, and you don't know, did they actually get their insurance policy? Did they go to a competitor? Did they just get overwhelmed and just fed up with the whole system? We don't know. So that's where systems can really help you. Instead of just getting frustrated yourself and tossing them on the floor, you're actually going to put them into a system that's going to work with them and on them wherever they happen to be, while you go on and spend most of your time on productive conversations where people are in this last phase of buying. Okay? So when that happens, when somebody kind of goes to sleep on you, right, you're going to want to, in an organized way, in a systematized way, you want to move them into this bottom part of the funnel. You should have a huge bucket down here, right? This bucket should be, as big as up here. It's not the whole market, right? But everybody you've talked to should go in here. Now, this is the critical phase, or the critical point that you might have heard me say. These are all people that you have talked to. So the number one mistake that I see down in this part of the funnel is when people go to sleep on you, there is this kind of lazy option to just take these people and stick them back in the top of the funnel. Don't do this, right? Make a red X on this. Don't do this. And you know why you don't do this? Because you just took somebody that you have talked to, that potentially built a tiny bit of relationship. They already have some brand awareness for you as a name, and you just stuck them back in this system or these set of campaigns that treats them like a stranger, right? So you have just given away all of your advantage. When you stick them back up in here, you're now competing again with the whole market, right? What I want to do is I want to put them down here, and I want to acknowledge and remind them of the fact that we have had a discussion. We started a relationship. I'm doing my best to help you. I'm always here to support you, even if you made other decisions. But hey, we've talked. And I think we connected, and we had sort of a little bit of a relationship here. That's the way I want to continue to talk to them as I move them back in this funnel, and hopefully I'm going to return them somewhere in this phase, right? I'm going to return them back here. When they start to come alive, we're going to kick them back into this phase. Never take them all the way back up here. Because as soon as you take them all the way back up here, you're competing with the whole market and all your competitors. You want to keep them in this tight circle right here of, and again, this is where this is my book of business, right? So if you were to, and this happens all the time, right? If you're an agency owner or you're a mortgage broker, if you ever wanted to sell your business, this is what gets you premium, right? To be able to demonstrate that I have thousands of people that are sitting in this phase of the sales, that is going to get you a premium on that business, because you have a system built here for managing and automating your book of business and constantly turning out brand new, fresh intent, or oftentimes we call them leads, right? But fresh intent. So I'm going to re-engage. This is where we're going to start using those marketing tools again, right? Remarketing, SEO, social media, PPC, email. But I know who these people are, right? So they're going to be in my custom audiences on Facebook. They're going to be on my email list that I'm going to talk to in a different way, because I know we already have a relationship. I'm going to force them to sort of assume that we have a relationship. And then of course, PPC, I've got a targeted group again, right? So I'm going to build everything here around the fact and the premise that we've already had a conversation. And I'm just trying to reassure you that I'm here to support you, to educate you, to bring you along this journey, whether you're currently a client or we just started to have this relationship. I consider you a client, regardless of whether or not you've bought anything from me. And some of your campaigns and your systems down here for clients will actually look very similar. So you're going to, even for clients, you want a re-engagement, you want an opportunity to, hey, set a date and I'm going to review your policies every so often. So that's a re-engagement strategy. That's a re-engagement system, right? Educating throughout the year. I don't want them to forget about me. If they have a 20-year term life insurance policy, I'm not going to wait 20 years, right, for them to forget about me. I'm going to be constantly educating them on other products that could fill other needs, to educate them as they move through different periods of their life and different life events, how those needs may change. So I'm going to have them in this education. Again, whether they're a client or not, I want to make sure I have these systems in place, these marketing and sales systems. And then awareness, right? At some point, as you've kind of gone through this education, you're going to kind of loop into, and you're going to have to start getting broader and broader, right? So once you get into this and maybe interspersed with somebody that, you know, you've been campaigning or you've had in your system for a couple years, as you get out into year two, you're probably going to talk about broad things. You're going to maybe talk about family topics. Maybe you're going to talk about travel and vacationing. Maybe you're going to talk about, kids, like what happens when kids go to college. So even though that's like not directly related to insurance or mortgage, you're going to start to broaden those topics out to make them aware that all these little things in life actually should have you talking to me again, right? Or should have you thinking about the products and services that I offer. And so that's why having little many systems throughout this process will actually enhance the value of your business. And then ultimately, what we're all trying to do, right, is just get more leads, right? And everything that you've invested in age leads and real-time leads and your own marketing up here, if you have systems, that ROI will get massive, right? The cost of generating a lead will become minuscule because you spend $1 today, but you potentially, because you're going to have this system that's going to keep them in your book of business for years, that dollar expense could generate 3 policies, 4 policies, right? So that ROI is just going to get astronomical as long as you can keep all of those leads in your system and working over years and years and years. So hopefully that's helped you to think a little bit differently about your sales and marketing program, and not so tactical. Tactics are important, skill building is important, but at some point you need to sit down and think at the highest level on a sheet of paper and build out a system that will allow you to have these little tiny activities going on. A lot of times you're going to do them manually first, but at some point start to systematize, automate some of these so that that whole database is constantly working for you, even though you're not touching it and you're spending all your time in these intimate conversations that is very, very close to the actual point of purchase. So as always, hope that helps you. Would love for you to subscribe and like this video. And the other thing, I always like to kind of figure out where you guys are standing. So for this week, I would love for you to tell me if you're using some sort of system. Say, yes, I have a system. No, I don't have a system. The other thing that I would love to hear is, what are you putting into, or what are you systematizing? What little processes? Are you using email campaigns? Are you using social media campaigns? Tell me a little bit, if you don't have a full system, anything that you have systematized or anything you have automated, I'd love to know what that is. Is it social media? Is it maybe your call campaigns? Maybe you're doing voicemail drops or something like that. Tell me something in your sales system today that you've automated. And maybe this is a good thought exercise for you to just kind of think through. Like, maybe I've already systematized some things, and how can I do more of that? So I'd love to see those in the comments. And then from there, we'll build out some more sales training, especially if there's something you're stuck on. Again, we'd love for you to put that in the comments. So I'm so enjoying doing these for you. I hope you're enjoying them as well. And we'll see you next time on our Age Lead Store channel.